What's going on, people? It's Kid Shorty Gaming Nation. Here to, as the title says, the 1990s policy that broke America. Clinton's betrayal, Trump's challenge, featuring the Angry Man. I was watching a live show of the Angry Man that he did, I think a couple weeks back or a couple days back, or last week maybe. And he pointed out some things that happened within the black culture, or one of the policies that Bill Clinton posted, that not only destroyed America or helped to create the, I want to say, the issues or a lot of the problems that led America in the pit of abyss we are in today. A lot of times when we talk about politics and we talk about Donald Trump and his presidency, a lot of the left and the Democrats on the left side, my cat won't come across the damn PC, motherfucker. When you talk about these things, the left seems to ignore what their side, whether it be Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, but mainly, Bill Clinton and Joe Biden, and Barack Obama, especially, has done to create problems in America, giving Donald Trump what he has to correct. Problems that was caused from Bill Clinton since the 90s. So today we're going to go into it. We're going to review a clip or video by my OG, the Angry Man. So let's begin, right? Now, I got to say this. When black men were speaking about why we could not be, I guess, providers in a household, or we couldn't effectively run our households in the 90s and the 80s and the 2000s and whatsoever. And we talked about the NAFTA agreement and how a lot of black men lost their jobs, especially when it comes to dating and mating, as Angry Man's going to describe in this video. Black women didn't give a shit. I remember growing up in the 2000s. I'm from East New York, Brooklyn, right? I was born in May 1992, right? So I remember that era. Growing up in the 90s, growing up in the 2000s, in the 2010s, it was very difficult for black men to get work, right? Because a lot of the jobs that black men were able to get during the 90s or before Bill Clinton's era, they were jobs where you didn't need a degree to go work in corporate America, right? Because it was more of an industrialization economy. Then it switched to a college economy, which a lot of service jobs, which were a lot of corporate American jobs, right? Black men had to adapt to corporate America, right? And there was a lot of gatekeeping that went on. A lot of, which I'm probably going to show a bit of that today. There was a lot of gatekeeping that was going on, preventing black men from getting work. Things that the EEOC documented, you know what I'm saying? Certain hiring practices, right? But black women were getting work and white women were getting work, and they were getting jobs over black men. And black men just couldn't find work in corporate America. For whatever reason it was. But black men, we were never given that empathy. We were never given that grace. We were never given that, that excuse, and a justifiable excuse, because what Bill Clinton did, it had nothing to do with black men. It was beyond our control. Right? So we're going to go into it, what Angry Man said here. And let me go play it.
So for a lot of the women in Gen X, they could get a job easily because of affirmative action.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to being able to get a job easily, they could find places to stay. They could take care of themselves, because if they had kids, they could get Section 8, they could get public housing, they could get freaking food stamps, they could get WIC, they could get all kinds of shit.
Mm-hmm.
So they had help. You feel me? With us, we had to pay for everything and didn't have jobs to make money to pay for everything. It's crazy, bro.
And I'm going to explain that. All right.
They literally, the Clinton.
See, this is what I do. I listen to everybody. I listen to what you have to say. And then there's something that people say, and it sparks my brain in my memory bank. And then I go on the internet and I research. I deep dive into the internet, and it's like I time travel. And I surf the internet for information to see if what you said aligns up with history. Right? What I try to tell people and I show people is the plays that were made on the chessboard, so that now when Black people get back to the chessboard, we know what the plays were, so we don't keep making the same mistakes or the same wrong moves, right? Or we could better strategize our plays. So oftentimes when I watch The Angry Man, I watch Tommy Sotomayor, I watch Mr. Fantastic, or many other cats in these spaces, that's what I do. I go look up the research. I go look up the information to see who's telling the truth or who's lying or who's bullshitting or who's wrong or whatsoever, or if you're right. You know what I'm saying? And I come back and I break it down for you. So here it is. Let's go back to what you got to say.
The Clinton administration literally put men in a lose-lose situation and put women in a win-win situation.
And I'm going to show you that.
And then they made it even worse with the Violence Against Women Act.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I think that's called, I'm going to show you that.
When those women in the late 90s, early 2000s were able to get places with Section 8, public housing, all of that shit, if you was a dude that was broke, but you was in a relationship with a woman, if you try to stay in her crib, guess what? She don't want you there because Section 8 find out you there, she lose her place.
And I remember that. I remember growing up in East New York, Brooklyn, and Queens, because I live in Cambridge Heights now. My parents moved me to Cambridge Heights. But I remember those little arguments and stuff, going to the hairdresser, my mother, listening to the women talking to the hairdresser, going to the barber shop, listening to how the men were talking in the barber shop. When I get my hair cut, when I used to go hang out with my pops, because my pops and my mother, they got divorced. And I used to go to Brooklyn. My pops was by Pink Housing Projects. And I would hear the conversation. I would hear the talks. And my pops, because we lived by Pink Housing Projects, I have friends from that era. So I would listen to the game and how the women would run the game on the dudes. How the women would get certain TANF checks, certain EBT stuff, Section 8. And I would listen to how they would on purposely get pregnant by certain dudes. And but the thing is that the daddies would be there, right? So this is why when they would come, when they would come out with the stats like deadbeat dad or 70% of out of wedlock births, and they contribute that to Black men being irresponsible. I used to say, no, that's not true, because growing up, I used to see a lot of fathers father their kids in them project buildings, right? And then we sit here and talk like some of the kids didn't belong to some of the fathers that was fathering them. But again, when you say these things, they're going to say it's anecdotal experience, and it's an anecdotal experience. So I would think that my experience was just me. I didn't think that everybody was going through these things or seeing this. The Tommy Sotomayor came on the scene, he talked about it. I heard guys like the Angry Man talk about it. So I'm like, you know what I'm saying? So I seen these things. I just thought, it was just little on me and my goofy ass experience. Now with technology and statistics and everybody coming out, now we know that what I was seeing is the same things that Tommy was seeing. And Tommy, he's from Atlanta. I think Angry Man is a New York nigga, like I'm a New York nigga. So, our viewpoints align up. Our experiences align up, right?
Right? If she tells them that you live there, they now want to add your income. And this is the crazy thing. If a chick is in a relationship with a dude and she go down there to social services for help, right? They want to put the dude's information in there, which is why the women won't tell them that the dude stay there, right?
Yep.
If she's there by herself, the way it used to
that
be,
also
she can stay on food stamps forever.
He said right there.
She can stay on.
That is also what contributes to them putting the stats of out of wedlock birth. Now, when they say out of wedlock birth, they're only talking about the woman's marital status. They're not talking about the father. You know why? Because when the women are giving birth to children, they're not putting the father on the birth certificate. This is how they get SSI. So this is how they conflate the numbers that, black men are the one contributing to the fatherlessness in America. But remember, they're only measuring the mother. You understand? They don't know if it's a black father or not. Now they assume that it's from black men because what? Typically the child is just a black kid, and typically how relationship dynamics go, people typically date within their own group or date within their own race. So they're assuming that it's black men contributing to the out of wedlock birth thing. The only thing is that now when you say 70% birth, it's saying the birth rate, right? So that means that a woman can have 3 kids by 2 dudes, or she could have 5 kids by 2 black dudes. Doesn't mean that she has 5 kids by 5 individual black men. But people reading those stats or projecting those stats, they don't tell you the full story. They just paint a narrative, and this is being done by both the left and the right. Remember, Joe Biden, he was from the left. He was a Democrat at the time of his crime bill proposal, right? So he's still a Democrat.
Section 8 forever. But if there's a man living there with her and she puts his name on the stuff, she can only get that assistance for a certain amount of time. That dude got to find a job within 3 months. Within 3 to 6 months, he got to find a job. Or she lose all of that shit. And if he does find a job, they're now going to add in his income to what she's getting. So everything that she's getting, she's going to lose anyway. So they put the women in a situation where, okay, nobody in the late 90s, early 2000s that was a regular worker would be able to hold down a household by themselves without any help, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's only 2 ways you could do it. 2 people working, right? But you couldn't do that because the men were having difficulty finding jobs.
Yeah.
So the only other solution was a woman by herself that has kids getting assistance. And the only way she could get that is.
And then because now of the Bill Clinton's NAFTA agreement, that's taken away a lot of industrial jobs. And only jobs that black women were to get if she was a single mother was like service jobs, which was low paying, right? Like McDonald's jobs or maybe a nurse's aide jobs, but those jobs were low income, low paying, so they were not enough to sustain. I'm going to break that down and explain that, after we review Angry Man.
Assistance is if a dude wasn't living with her. I'm telling you right now, they did this shit to put men at the bottom and raise women to the top.
Now, this is where we're going to break it down. So shout out to the OG Angry Man for your assistance. We're going to go into Bill Clinton's policies and America's downfall. Let's get it. Structured breakdown, Bill Clinton's policies and America's downfall. NAFTA 1994, the trade shock. What happened? Open free trade between U.S., Mexico, and Canada. Effect massive outsourcing of U.S. manufacturing jobs. Hit black men and working class Americans hardest. Industrial Midwest gutted. Rust Belt. Long-term consequences. Dependency on foreign supply chains. Rise of cheap labor competition and wage stagnation. So now, what Angry Man he was talking about, where black men couldn't find jobs, and then when I'm talking about what black women were, when they were able to work, well, first of all, they couldn't be able to have work because of that's how you got Section 8, or that's how you got welfare and EBT. But say you were a single mother, and you didn't want any of that stuff, right? And you want to go work. There's no industrial job. There's no job like textile plants for you to go work at, or factory work for you to go work at. So you worked at, low wage service industry jobs like McDonald's or some kind of restaurant. But those wages was not enough to sustain a family, sustain a single mother and raise a child, right? China's MFN status. Signed after groundwork laid under Clinton. What happened? Clinton normalized trade with China. Effect: explosive outsourcing of factories, especially electronics, textiles, and machinery. Long-term consequences: America lost industrial independence. China became the manufacturing powerhouse. Let me tell you something. Jamaica is going through that issue, or has been going through that issue, when it comes to the agriculture industry, because they're importing goods, but they're not exporting goods. So that's giving them a hit. Well, the same thing is happening to America. Happened to America, right? It's very important for you as an American citizen, or America as a nation, to be able to produce and manufacture your own goods, right? And to have it in surplus, so you don't need other people's goods, especially cheap goods from China. Like, for example, this Xbox controller. I just got this motherfucker, and it already has sticky shit, sticky triggers, and it's marked made in China. You know what I'm saying? A lot of shit that's not working that we have in America is because we're importing it from China. And you mean to tell me we can't hire a labor force in America for apprenticeship jobs in schools to teach students how to make stuff? Welfare reform, 1996. Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act. What happened? Push millions off welfare with work requirements, but no jobs to absorb them. So now welfare reform comes 1996. But Bill Clinton, he takes NAFTA agreement and he pushes all those jobs that you want women to work in, but they don't have those jobs to work. Effect: hurt single mothers, black families, communities that already had limited job access. Long-term consequences: rise in poverty cycles, reliance on low-wage service work, I told you, family destabilization. Crime bill, Violent Criminal Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. What happened? Expanded prisons, harsher sentences, mandatory minimum, 3 strikes law. Mass incarceration, especially black men, removing them from the labor force. Long-term consequences: generational damage to family structure and community economics. Now, some conservatives is going to say, you should have did the time. If you did the crime, you should have did the time. Bullshit. Because now you have the Innocence Project reviewing a lot of those cases and going back and saying, man, these brothers shouldn't have been locked up. Right? And this affected a lot of white America. Financial deregulation, the Grammy and Leach-Billy Act of 1999. This caused the housing crash in 2008. That recession we had, right? So what happened? Repeal Glass-Steagall, lets banks merge investments and commercial banking. In fact, set the stage for 2008 financial crash. Long-term consequences: created the too big to fail banks, wealth gap explosion, corporate overreach, right? What's the wealth gap explosion, right? So now when you have the middle class, and now the middle class is being destroyed, they have no homes, you can't find jobs to buy new homes, now it's taking away the middle class, right? And now corporate overreach, they have more power. Bill Clinton's policy locked pro-growth is short term, but they gutted manufacturing. They hollowed out the working and middle class. They weakened the family structure through welfare reform and mass incarceration. That let Wall Street run wild, leading to the 2008 collapse. So now you're taking away the jobs. Mass incarceration is taking away the labor force. Taking away manufacturing. Now you don't have the labor force to manufacture the goods that you need for people to trade with stocks and bonds on Wall Street. Then you have the housing crash. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's stuck in survival mode. So a lot of shit led up to, certain things happening into America. Why Trump got stuck with the fallout? Clinton planted seeds: outsourcing, China trade, deregulation, right? Bush and Obama watered them. Wars, housing bubble, more globalization. By the time Trump came, He inherited a broken economy and supply chain, hence his push for tariffs, reassuring and rebuilding the American industry. What that means when you say reassuring, that's like I think that's like a ship term, right? You're taking the businesses that left your shore and then reshoring them back to your shore to bring back that economy, right? What happened? Clinton signed the NAFTA to eliminate tariffs between the US, Mexico, Canada, intending to increase trade. While trade increased, US manufacturing jobs moved to Mexico for cheaper labor. Effects on families and labor. Massive layoffs in the industrial Midwest and South disproportionately affected Black men and working class. Remember, in the Midwest, I believe in the South, this is where the Jim Crow, this is where Jim Crow and a lot of Black people were coming off of slavery. Remember, Jim Crow was like what, 50, 60, 70 years ago? You understand? So a lot of Black men in the South, right, that had skills and they were working in these things, in these textile companies and these manufacturing places, making money and to providing for the family. Now that stuff is gone, right? Job loss, economic instability, higher rates of stress, and family breakdown. Communities dependent on factory jobs saw increase in single-parent households due to financial pressure, right? Because now you're a Black man and your identity is wrapped around, I could provide for my family. I could hold it down for my kid. Now you don't have a job. You know what I'm saying? And then now your woman decides to say, fuck it. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to break up. I'm going to put myself on EBT and welfare. Now you have a whole bunch of single mothers running that hustle, like I've seen in the hood. Right? Long-term consequences. Disrupted the male breadwinner model in working class families, contributing to directly to family instability. Right? China trade and MFN, most favored nation status, 1990s to the 2000s. Clinton supported permanent normal trade relations with China, paving the way for China to export goods to the U.S. with low tariffs. U.S. manufacturing continued to decline, with entire industries outsourced, effects on family and labor. Job displacement created economic pressure on fathers and male heads of household. Financial instability. Delayed marriages. So Black men, you couldn't get married to your woman because you wanted to pay for the thing, for the marriage. You wanted to be the breadwinner. And you just didn't get married because you just couldn't afford it, right? Higher rates of cohabitation without marriage and fewer nuclear families. So now, this is where, like a Black woman and a Black man, they would shack up, he would get her pregnant, but they're not getting married. They're sticking to, instead of going to go buy a house to start like a nuclear family in a house, private property, you get that picket fence home. Your kids grow, you have children, they grow up, they inherit their house. You can't start that because you don't have the financial ability to do so, right? And then you have fewer nuclear families. The nuclear family is the microcosm of a society, right? Capitalist society. The foundation to a capitalist society to thrive is a nuclear family. Welfare reform, Personal Responsibility and Worker Opportunity Act. What happened? Clinton replaced aid to families with dependent children with temporary assistance for needy families. It's kind of, right? Yeah. If you're from the hood, and if Angry Man ever watched this, TANFs, right? Added work requirements and time limits for welfare benefits. Effect on families. Single mothers had to find employment, often low-wage jobs with little time or resources to focus on family stability. So now the father, he don't have a job. The mother now has to go out there and hustle and grind. Kids acting up badass. If you're from the hood, you know what it is with the kids. You understand? You have to go pay for babysitter. You understand? Daycare, and they're expensive. There's a lot of shit tied to this. TANF disproportionately affected Black women communities where job opportunities were scarce. Incentivized women to stay single rather than depend on male partners who may have limited economic prospects, because the law reduced benefits if a man was present. Shout out to the angry man, just said that. Yo, Bill Clinton, your legacy, you fucked up America, bro. Not just you, Reagan did it too, but Reagan did it in a specific area. And I'm gonna talk about that in the next video, in a separate video. Impact on dating and mating dynamics. Shifted the economic power in single-parent households to mothers sometimes reducing incentives for men to marry or cohabitate. Some sociologists argue TANF inadvertently reinforced matrifocal household structures, weakening the nuclear family in certain communities. Matrifocal means mother-centered, right? So that's a new word you should look up. Sometimes reduce incentives for men to marry or cohabitate. Shifted the economic power in single-parent households to mothers. Sometimes reducing incentives for men to marry or cohabitate. So Angry Man just spoke about that, right? 1994 crime bill. What happened? Expanded prisons, mandatory minimum sentences, and 3 strike laws. Funded police militarization and anti-drug incentives. Mass incarceration disproportionately affected Black men, removing them from the communities. Family disruption, fathers incarcerated, children raised in a single-parent household. Widened gender imbalance in communities, fewer eligible men for long-term relationships. In my opinion, I think y'all was just trying to attack Black men. This is a Marxist attack to Black men in our household. I'm not going to go into it right now, but I believe this is what it was. Impact on mating and dating. Reduced pool of economically independent men. Challenges in forming nuclear families. Increased social dysfunction and reliance on government support for single mothers. Right. So now this is forcing your Black women to now focus on relying on the state instead of relying on their Black men. You know what I'm saying? This you can say is a Marxist kind of ploy, because now if your women is dependent on the state, now they're going to listen to what the state tells them to become in order to get money or to get benefits, right? So now now they're not going to listen to Black men because Black men are not in a position because of what happened with NAFTA and many other things that are broke down. They're not going to listen to Black men because Black men are not in the economic position. DOMA and court-related family policies. What happened? Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA, federally defining marriages as between one man and one woman, while primarily targeting same-sex marriage. Clinton-era administration also influenced family court policies, with reforms in child support, custody, and divorce proceedings. Effects on families and nuclear family stability. Courts increasingly awarded custody to mothers, sometimes limiting father involvement. Child support enforcement increased, but often without robust father support programs to enable men to provide effectively. Domestic violence laws strengthened, but in some cases, they were used disproportionately in ways that could remove fathers from the household. This is what the Violence Against Women Act was, or Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA, right? So this is now where if you're a Black man in your household and you raise your voice, your Black woman call the police on you. And she called one of them nigger-hating police to come get you. You know what I'm saying? And then now, and I'm going to go into the Duluth model, right? And on a Duluth model that influenced a lot of this, the police is automatically look to work against you. My damn cat. What's up, man? Right? Long-term consequences. Some scholars argue these policies unintentionally disincentivize father participation, further weakening nuclear families. How I mean by that? Because now, if your woman is calling the police on you, and she's constantly being hostile towards you, and she's arresting you, and then you make the child support system bad against men, Black men are not going to look at being with a woman and having a kid by a woman as something right to him, beneficial to him. He's going to look at it as hostile. And Black men are doing that. That's what Angry Man was talking about in that video. So Black men, this is why Black men do not want to marry Black women. It's because they're using the laws that were passed by Bill Clinton and weaponizing them against Black men. Right? Combined with economic instability, these legal frameworks contributed to the imbalance in dating and marriage markets today, especially in Black communities. Financial deregulation. Gramm-Leach-Billy Act, 1999. What happened? Repeal parts of Glass-Steagall allowing banks to merge investments and commercial banking. Effects on families. Facilitated in the 2008 financial crisis later. This was I think, the recession we went through. Families lost homes, savings, and wealth. This importantly affected communities of color. I think there was a movie on Netflix about a brother. He was highly intelligent, and he got into the housing market. And what happened is he was using dope money. He was selling drugs to make up the money to invest in the housing. But unfortunately, he lost his life in that movie. It had Mary J. Blige in it, and I forgot the name of the movie. But it talked about this. Financial strain, family stress, delayed marriage, and weakened long-term stability. All right? Big picture on family and relationship dynamics. Economic displacements and legal incentives equal family stress. Clinton-era traded welfare and crime policies reduced job opportunities for men. Right. So now remember, if you had a criminal thing for something small on your jacket, and you went to go find work, you were not getting hired at the time. You know what I'm saying? While simultaneously creating incentives for women to stay independent financially, nuclear family weakened. Courts, welfare, incarceration policies shifted balance of household power, often reducing male participation. And I explained that earlier. Dating and mating imbalances. Fewer economically stable men, delayed marriages, and lower nuclear family formation. Culture feedback loop. Economic and legal policies combined with societal norms reinforce single-parent households and reliances on government support. Matrifocal. Definition: a household or family structure where the mother is central figure. So this is what matrifocal is. Definition: a household or family structure where the mother is the center figure, often primary decision maker and provider for the household. Key traits: children live with or revolve around the mother. Fathers may be absent, marginal, or secondary in influence. Economic and social support often comes from the mother or extended family, female family. Many single parents households, particularly where fathers are absent, can be considered matrifocal. Right? So now, that 7% out of wedlock birth doesn't mean that the men weren't there. They were there. It's just that you couldn't, there was just like, which I don't believe the government didn't know that, because I know they used to hire private investigators to see what niggas was doing in the hood. Right? In my opinion, allegedly, right? Economic, social support, right? So now, this is where, if I'm able to pull this information, how come a lot of people who are reading these stats on these media platforms, they don't give this full nuance and narrative? Because the men were there, it's just that they were either marginal or secondary in influence. And most of the black men who are there, that the most involved father within the kids, that which are black men, they're in the secondary influence category. Understand? Definition: a society or family where women hold primary power and authority, not just centrally in the house. So this is matriarchal, right? Women control property, inheritance, and decision-making authority. Men may have limited or symbolic roles in governance or family leadership, blah, 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 blah. That's matriarchy. There's a difference between matriarchy and matrifocal. In context, the Clinton era welfare policies, scholars often describe the result as matrifocal households because single mothers became the central economic and social figures in the family, even if the society at large remained patriarchal. So black women, it's not black men's fault why you got put in this position. Yet y'all motherfuckers call Bill Clinton the black man of the first black president to be elected. And look how much bullshit he took from your black men or did to your black men and put you in this position. But it's always Jermaine's fault. Background of GLBA. Official name, Gramm-Leach-Billy Act, also called the Financial Services. Signed by President Bill Clinton. Primary purpose, repeal parts of the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933, which has separated commercial banking, deposits taken in loans, from investment banking, security stocks, and derivatives. While Glass-Steagall existed after the 1929 crash, banks that combined commercial investment functions contributed to catastrophic speculation. Separation was designed to prevent conflicts of interest and reduce systematic risk. So why the fuck would Bill Clinton combine it again, knowing that that's what caused the problem back then? Why would he do this? If it caused the crash in 1933, why would you combine it again, which caused the crash again in 2008? This nigga repeated it. This man, I'm gonna call him a nigga because y'all call him the first elected black president. This dude signed something into act that caused a problem in the past, that then caused a problem again in 2008. He still signed it. Boy, oh boy. GLBA changed that. Allowed commercial banks, investment banks, and insurance companies to merge and operate under one corporate umbrella. That is a problem because now a corporate entity, whoever's in charge of that corporate entity, he can determine these things. He can raise the prices on everything. He can control. It's under one control. Somebody on the top can control that thing, and somebody who's influenced the person on the top can influence that person and put it in the hands of somebody else, and they can cause a crash if they want to, which is probably what happened. Mechanisms that led to risk: bank consolidations and too big to fail. GLBA enabled massive mergers. Citigroups combined banking, insurance, and investment, resulting in institutions so large that failure would threaten the entire economy. Conflicts of interest. Banks could sell risky investments to customers while simultaneously betting against them. Example, selling mortgage-backed securities while holding short positions on subprime mortgages. Bill Clinton caused this shit. Increased leverage and risk taking. Banks use deposits to fund highly leveraged investment activities. Leverage ratios grew without significant regulations, magnifying potential losses. Subprime mortgage expansion. Banks could package high-risk mortgages into securities and sell them to investors because deposits were federally insured. Banks had less incentive to manage risk responsibly. The banks were just going crazy with people's money. Weak oversight. GLBA preempted state regulations and loosened federal oversight, creating regulatory gaps, allowed financial institutions to operate complex derivatives and investment schemes with minimal supervision. No oversight. So this is just the fuck with people's money. Connection to the 2008 financial crisis. By the early 2000s, banks were heavily invested in mortgage-backed securities and collateralized debt obligations. Subprime mortgage lending skyrocketed. Banks issued loans to borrowers who couldn't realistically repay. That's the predatory shit they was talking about, expecting to offload risk through MBS. When housing prices stagnated and mortgage defaulted, banks lost massive sums. Interconnected institutions spread the risk across the global financial system. Lehman Brothers collapse triggered a global liquidity crisis because they all merged to each other. Wow. Key outcomes: stock markets crash, home foreclosures surge, unemployment spike. Entire communities, especially black and working class neighborhoods, lost generational wealth. This is Bill Clinton's doing. And somehow this was black men's fault. Loss of wealth. Families lost homes and savings. Retirement funds tied to stocks lost values. Family stress. Economic strain. Higher divorce rates. Delayed marriages. Single-parent households. Labor force impact. Job losses in finance, construction, and manufacturing. Layoffs disproportionately hit minority communities. Economic inequality. Wealth gap widened. Recovery favored high-income earners, while working-class families faced stagnation. Bro, that 2008, bro, that shit was terrible experience. But at the time, I was young. I was going to high school at the time, so I didn't understand what was going on. I just knew that everybody was just in some shit. Criticism and lessons. Critics argue GLBA created the conditions for moral hazard, where banks assumed they would be bailed out if risky bets failed. Consequences: taxpayer-funded bailouts, TARP, became necessary to stabilize the system. Policy takeaway: deregulation without oversight in complex financial systems can create long-term systematic risk affecting both economy, and family stability. Yo, this fucked up capitalism. And it gave capitalism a bad name with this tax-funded bailouts. So now on top of that, taxpayers can't find work, can't find jobs to work. They're losing their homes, and now you're taking whatever money they have in their damn wallet to bail out TARP. Because, bro, the Grimian-Leach-Billy Act repealed safeguards put in place after the Great Depression, enabling financial institutions to take excessive risk. These risks amplified the 2008 financial crisis, destroying wealth, destabilizing families, and undermining economic opportunity, particularly for Black Americans and working-class families. Wow. Bill Clinton, this is your legacy. Background of DOMA. What's up, man? Am I kidding? I think this is a calico. President Bill Clinton on September 21st, 1996, proposed federally defined marriages between one man and one woman, allow states to refuse to recognize same-sex marriages performed in other states. Context: in the 1990s, several U.S. states began considering legal recognition of same-sex relationships. DOMA was presented as compromise to maintain federal uniformity while allowing states to decide individuality, right? Key provisions of DOMA. Title I, federal definition of marriage. Marriage for federal purposes was only between one man and one woman. Affected federal benefits, including Social Security spousal and survival benefits, federal tax filing status, health insurance, pensions, and retirement benefits. So it's actually beneficial for you to get married, right? Immigration sponsorship for spouses. Title II, state non-recognition clause. States not required to recognize same-sex marriages from other states. Created a paycheck system where a couple married in one state might be legally invisible in another, right? Impact in heterosexual families. While targeted at same-sex couples, DOMA indirectly influenced legal interpretations of marriage as strictly male-female. Economic and social union. Reinforced state-level jurisdiction over family law, including custody and child support, right? Social and family implication. Custody and divorce. DOMA solidified in traditional marriage definitions in federal law, which reinforced patriarchal norms in court. Decisions about child custody. Courts increasingly favored mothers in custody battles, especially when fathers were absent or economically disadvantaged. And so now, if you have fathers that were not able to find jobs, and during this time, because of NAFTA, and now the woman, she's on whatever financial gain from the government, she's going to be now in a more economic advantage, right? DOMA indirectly contribute to a legal environment where fathers could be sidelined, especially in low-income and minorities communities. And see, now Black women will make that lie up that Black men don't fight for their kids, but they did. It's just that the courts was in favor of the mother. Economic impacts on families. Single-parent households, many mothers receive more access to federal support programs. Fathers' roles were weakened if courts considered their economic contribution secondary. Combined with Clinton-era welfare reform, this sometimes reinforced matrifocal households. Mating and dating imbalances. By reinforcing legal and social norms around marriage and parenting, DOMA contributed to a smaller pool of legally recognized male partners with full rights in the household, reduced incentive for men to marry if economic contributions did not secure family or legal authority, ongoing imbalances in dating and family formation landscape, particularly in Black and working class communities. So this is why Black men were not marrying to Black women, because the culture was tipped into women's favor, and Black men did not have the economic standing to even get into marriage with Black women, because Black women requests from Black men was you got to have money or have a job, right? Intersection with other Clinton policies. Welfare reform plus DOMA. Single mothers had financial independence, making marriage less economically necessary. Crime bill plus DOMA. Fathers incarcerated or economically unstable were less able to participate fully in family life. Economic displacement. Job loss among men combined with legal frameworks emphasizing female-centered households reinforce matrifocality, right? So, welfare reform DOMA. Single mothers had financial independence, making marriage less economically necessary. Prior bill plus DOMA, fathers incarcerated or economically unstable were less able to participate fully in family life. Economic displacement. Job loss among men combined with legal frameworks emphasizing female-centered household reinforce matrifocality. This is Clinton's policies. Takeaway. DOMA's original enactment shaped the 1996 to 2013 family landscape in ways that reinforced federal and state control over traditional family structures, often sidelining fathers and emphasizing mothers' economic centrality. Combined with economic pressures. What's up, man? What you wanting to me about? What happened? What's up? All right. Combined with economic pressures and welfare reform, DOMA contributed to imbalances in household structure, mating dynamics, and nuclear family formations, particularly in vulnerable communities. Right, and Black culture is very vulnerable. DOMA reinforced a federal legal definition of family that indirectly affected custody, father participation in household economics. Along with other Clinton-era policies, it created structural conditions that influenced nuclear family stability, gender roles, and mating dynamics in the decades that followed. Right, so this is what we're dealing with up until now. The only difference is now Black men, because of the gig economy, was able to pull himself up. You know what I'm saying? Hillary Clinton's dilute model concept. The dilute model, as discussed in some political analysis and interviews, refers to Hillary Clinton's broader strategy during the 1990s. Dilute potential opposition or countenance issues by framing them in socially acceptable terms. In family policy, this meant advocating for women's rights, welfare reform, and empowerment while maintaining a politically moderate public image. Essentially, continuous debates like LGBTQ rights, marriage definitions, or gender roles were diluted to prevent alienating middle America. It's important to note that the dilute model was more of a strategic approach, not a formal law or codified policy. But you cannot convince me that this did not influence the Violence Against Women's Act by Bill Clinton. Like, read the language. You know what I'm saying? And then now they're advocating for LGBTQ rights and marriage definitions and gender roles. You know what I'm saying? And then, you're advocating for women's rights, but you're not thinking about the men. You know what I'm saying? Connection between DOMA and the dilute model. DOMA was signed by Bill Clinton during a period when public opinion on same-sex marriage was strongly against legalization. The 1996 presidential election was approaching. Political context. Republicans were pushing a socially conservative platform, emphasizing traditional marriage. Clinton needed to appear centrist on social issues to avoid losing moderate voters. Influence of Hillary's strategy. Hillary's approach emphasizes protecting women's social and economic interests, welfare reform, while not alienating the middle ground on family issues. DOMA framing defining marriage as male-female, allowing states to govern recognition, can be seen as aligned with the dilute model. It avoided fully alienating social conservative voters. It allowed the administration to continue other gender-focused reforms. Welfare reform, healthcare incentives, child protection laws. You know what I'm saying? So, like, a lot of these things that was passed into it, this is just to appease people, to appease the public and not to lose votes and to gain seats of power. And then it's affecting people. You know what I'm saying? Patriot outcome of this influence. DOMA did not originate from Hillary Clinton, but administration political calculus, which she influenced, likely shaped how the law was presented and defended. By using the dilute model approach, the Clinton administration appeared moderate, balancing progressive social goals, welfare reform, women's advancement, with traditionalist pressures, DOMA. The law maintained federal alignment with conservative state policies, allowing the administration to focus on other priorities, right? So there's a lot of shit going on here. You know what I'm saying? Implications for family structure. Because DOMA codified male-female marriage at the federal level and reinforced traditional legal frameworks around child custody and benefits. Federal support systems, TANF, child support enforcement that favor maternal centrality, combined with. So now, when they say about the traditional legal framework, they're talking about now, because a lot of the laws and tradition, it was to help the woman, which is funny because nowadays women, they don't want to be traditional, but they benefit from traditional frameworks, right? So the traditional framework was if that man died or, you got into a divorce, there was a law that the woman would gain some kind of support from it. You know what I'm saying? So they're still using traditional stuff to benefit feminist, gynocentric stuff. You understand? Now it's supposed to be supporting the child, but it's really to support the mother so she can support the child. And a lot of women took advantage of this, right? Combined with welfare reform in the crime bill, this contributed to the rise of matrifocal households, delayed male family participation, and imbalances in mating dynamics in affected communities, right? Summary: Joan was politically motivated, not purely ideological, progressive, or conservative. Hillary Clinton's dilute model likely influenced the administration's presentation and defense of DOMA, making it palatable in mainstream voters, while pursuing other women-focused policies, right? The indirect effect was a legal reinforcement of mother-centered households and limited father participation, intersecting with economic and criminal justice policies to shape family dynamics for decades. Now that's that. This is how Clinton policy destroyed America and shit. You know what I'm saying? This is how that was done. This is why we have what we have now. This is what's given Trump a lot of problems to fix, because mainly when it comes to the economy, trying to make America a manufacturer and be able to manufacture its own goods and make itself its manufacturing capabilities back. This affected families, the black men, ability to provide for their families and stuff. And now gave women the power to fend for themselves or financially able to be for themselves. And then with the TANF and WIC and welfare programs, incentivizing women to be more single. A lot of this shit contributes, bro. So, man, that was what Bill Clinton did. Billy Clinton did. I think I'm gonna go into something else a little bit later on another video. Not gonna go into it in this one, but just a lot of important stuff. Right? I might go into what are tariffs next. I'm going to go into what are tariffs and what Donald Trump is trying to do to fix America and the reasons why he's doing it. I'm going to go into how Reagan, his decision with the college economy destroyed America's future. So there's a lot of shit that happened in American history that messed us up today. We have to review this. We have to review the landscape, review what happened, so we don't make the same mistakes again. We don't repeat this shit. Like what Bill Clinton did with the crash. In 1933, something was passed to separate the banks, and then Bill Clinton passed it again to combine them, causing the same fucking effect that happened. You know what I'm saying? This is what I'm talking about. But anyway, this is Kish Shorty Gaming Nation. Shout out to everybody else. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Shout out to the Angry Man. I'm out.